Remember all those shiny electric cars we were supposed to be driving by now? Well, it turns out the future might be running a little low on juice. Welcome to Deep Dive, where we like to swerve past the hype and hit the road of reality. And today, we're asking, are electric cars actually stalling out? I'm really excited to be joined by Madi to help us decode all of this. You're amazing at putting the pieces together, Madi, so let's see what we can uncover. Oh, and before we get rolling, if you find this deep dive interesting, make sure to hit that subscribe button on Mindwaves Talk and share this with anyone who might be thinking about going electric. Seriously, they're going to want to hear this. Okay, let's get into it. We're diving deep into a bunch of reports, first-hand accounts from YouTubers who really know cars and the market, and even financial news from places like CNBC. The question we're trying to answer is, are we just seeing a small dip in EV sales? Or is this the start of something bigger? Because one thing's for sure, those sales numbers are definitely dropping. And not just like coasting downhill, this is more like slamming on the brakes.
Tesla, who's supposed to be leading the pack, saw their deliveries drop by 20%. That's not a slowdown, that's a U-turn. And get this, CNBC saying it took twice as long to sell an EV in the US this August compared to last January. And there's a 97-day supply of EVs just sitting on dealer lots right now, compared to like 52 to 58 days for regular gas-powered cars. Makes you wonder, what's going on here?
What's really interesting is that all that hype around EVs, the one that got those early adopters so excited, seems to have fizzled out. The average person just isn't buying it.
Yeah, didn't Hertz make a big deal about buying all those Teslas a while back? Well, guess what? Now they're selling off 20,000 of them. Apparently, people just weren't renting them, and the repair costs were crazy high. Ouch. That's got to hurt.
And it's not just Hertz. If you look at the data from Carriage, Ford, Hyundai, Volkswagen, they're all drowning in EVs that no one wants. So we've got all these cars sitting around, sales are down. You have to wonder what's making people think twice, right?
Absolutely. I mean, EVs were supposed to be the future. What happened?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to money. CNBC says the average EV still costs something between $53,000 and $60,000. That's a lot more than what most people are paying for their cars.
Right. And it's not just the price tag that's scaring people off. It's like there are all these hidden costs that come with an EV, like insurance, for example. It's
Yep.
crazy expensive.
Yeah.
Insuring a Tesla can be like 50% more than a similar gas car. Then there's repairs.
EVs have all those computers and high voltage systems, which makes fixing them way more complicated. So if something goes wrong, you're looking at a pretty hefty bill.
Oh, and don't even get me started on depreciation. Auto Trader's list of cars that lose value the fastest is basically an EV popularity contest. And the Tesla Model X is the winner, losing almost 30% of its value in just 1 year. I even read about this Porsche Taycan owner who lost 2/3 of the car's value in 2 years.
2/3. Wow, that's rough.
I know, right? That's like a financial punch to the gut. You'd almost need therapy after that.
If we think about this in the bigger picture, though, it kind of makes you wonder, are EVs just becoming the disposable electronics of the car world? Some places are even starting to build junkyards for EVs because fixing them, especially the battery, just costs too much. It's a totally different story from regular used cars, which can last for years and years.
Wait, are they seriously building EV junkyards already? That's kind of crazy. I didn't expect that so soon.
It definitely says something about what's happening in the market. And speaking of things that don't last, one of the biggest worries people have about EVs is the battery. How long will it actually hold up? And what happens when it needs replacing?
Yeah, we've all heard those horror stories about how cold weather can drain your battery range. That's got to be a big concern if you live somewhere that gets cold, or if you can't charge your car at home every night. Plus, there's no good way to tell how healthy the battery is when you buy a used EV. It's like a total gamble. You never know what you're going to get.
And if you need a new battery outside of the warranty, it can easily cost more than the car itself. That's a deal breaker for most people, especially considering how fast those EVs are already losing value. It's a double whammy.
Okay, so we've got pricey cars, expensive repairs, and batteries that might not last. I'm starting to see why people are hesitant. But wait, we haven't even talked about charging yet. And let's just say it can get a little charged. Some YouTubers who actually went out and tested public chargers found that over 40% of them were broken. And the whole experience, from paying to figuring out if your car is even compatible, is a total pain.
It's a huge obstacle, especially if you can't charge at home. Imagine being stuck somewhere with a dead battery because you can't find a charger that works. That's a whole level of stress that gas car drivers never have to worry about.
And even if you do manage to find a charger that's working, having to wait hours to charge up just isn't practical for a lot of people, especially compared to filling up your gas tank, which takes, what, 5 minutes?
Right. And CNBC points out that the whole charging situation is even worse in some parts of the country.
Like in California, where tons of people have EVs, the power grid is already struggling to keep up. They even had to ask people to avoid charging their cars during a heat wave. That's kind of scary if you think about it. What happens when everyone's driving an EV? Is the grid even ready for that?
It does make you wonder. And then there's the environmental impact of actually making these EVs, especially the batteries. Right now, EV production actually creates a bigger carbon footprint than making traditional gas cars. And in a lot of places, they're still using coal-powered electricity to charge them, so that whole green image gets a little complicated.
Okay, so we've seen how tough it can be for everyday drivers. But are the car companies themselves as all in on EVs as they used to be?
That's a good question. And the answer, surprisingly, is no. We're actually starting to see reports that a bunch of big car companies are hitting the brakes on their electric dreams.
Really? Like who?
Ford and Chevy have both pushed back their launch dates for some of their EV projects, and even some European companies like Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen are having second thoughts about going all electric.
Wow, that's a huge change. What's making them hesitate?
Well, it seems like reality is starting to sink in. EVs aren't selling as fast as they thought they would, production costs are still way too high, and the whole battery supply chain is a mess. It's making them reconsider. Plus, they're realizing they need to offer more options to fit different needs and budgets.
So are you saying the good old gas engine might not be dead just yet?
Exactly. In fact, BMW and Toyota are actually doubling down on making new gas and diesel engines. They're clearly betting that those engines still have a future.
What about Mercedes-Benz? I heard they're ditching their whole EQ branding for their electric cars. What happened there?
It seems like they tried to get too futuristic, too fast. They pushed these really weird egg-shaped designs that just didn't connect with their luxury car buyers.
Oh yeah, I remember those. They definitely look different.
And their flagship electric sedan, the EQS, which was supposed to be a Tesla killer, was a total flop. It lost value like crazy, sales were terrible. It's almost like they forgot that people, especially luxury car buyers, still want a car that actually looks like a car, even if it's electric.
It's kind of funny because their most successful electric model so far is the electric G-Wagon, which is basically an electric version of their classic gas guzzler. They kept the same rugged design, and it's been a hit. I guess it goes to show that you don't always have to reinvent the wheel, even in the EV world. So we've got car companies rethinking their plans, customers aren't buying. What does all this mean for the future of electric cars? Is the dream of an all-electric world fading away?
It's definitely a lot more complicated than the simple, happy picture we were all sold a few years ago. The EV market is going through a bit of a reality check. That transition to an all-electric future is going to be a lot slower and bumpier than anyone expected.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right? There are still people who are really passionate about EVs, and there's always the possibility of new technology that could fix some of these issues. What do you think, Maddie?
Yeah, I think you're right. The EV market isn't going to disappear overnight, but we're clearly in a time of adjustment. Breakthroughs in technology could definitely change things. Like, imagine batteries that are way better, a charging system that actually works, or maybe even software that makes the whole EV experience smoother. But people are also starting to realize that maybe we need a more balanced approach, like hybrid vehicles, for example. They're making a comeback. They're more affordable and practical than all-electric cars, which makes them a good option for people who aren't ready to go fully electric yet.
You know, that actually makes a lot of sense. It's like a bridge to a more electric future, but without all the downsides we've been talking about.
Exactly. Hybrids take care of those immediate worries people have, like range anxiety and charging nightmares. Plus, they still give you better fuel efficiency.
Speaking of bridges, what about the government's role in all this? They've been pushing EVs pretty hard, haven't they?
They have, but their approach has been a bit of a mixed bag. Government subsidies can help boost demand in the short term, but it's debatable whether they can keep that up forever.
Yeah, Germany had to scrap their EV subsidy program because they ran out of money. And here in the US, those EV incentives are always changing, which makes the whole market feel really unpredictable.
It definitely creates a lot of uncertainty. And then there's the global picture. Right now, China basically controls the entire supply chain for those essential EV battery components. That raises some serious questions about supply chain vulnerability and geopolitical risks. What if something happens over there? The whole EV market could be in trouble.
It's like we're relying on one country for the key to our electric future. That's a bit nerve-wracking, to be honest.
It is. And to make things even more complicated, the economic slowdown in China is impacting EV sales all over the world. They're even exporting tons of unsold EVs to Europe at super low prices.
Wow, it really is a tangled web, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway here? What should people be thinking about after hearing all this?
I think the most important thing is to move past the hype and have a more honest conversation about the challenges and realities of EV adoption. It's not about picking sides, it's about understanding the trade-offs, considering all the different viewpoints, and finding solutions that work for a wider range of people.
Well said, Maddie. I think that's a perfect place to wrap up part 1 of our EV deep dive. We've uncovered a lot of surprising information, from slumping sales and hitting costs to the appeal of hybrids and the bigger global picture. Join us for part 2, where we'll keep exploring the ups and downs of the EV market and see what the road ahead might look like. Welcome back to Deep Dive. So before we get too deep into all the question marks around EVs, I want to talk about Norway for a second. They're kind of like the poster child for going electric, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. It's pretty wild. Like 87% of all new car sales there are fully electric. But here's the kicker. Their main export is fossil fuels. Kind of ironic, don't you think?
It's like they're telling the world to go green while they keep pumping oil. So what's the deal with Norway's love affair with EVs?
Well, a big part of it comes down to government incentives. Back in the 90s, they made EVs tax-free. We're talking about saving like $27,000 on a new car. Plus, they got all these perks, like free tolls and parking. Talk about making it tempting.
So it's more about getting a good deal than saving the planet.
It seems that way. But as more people bought EVs, those freebies started to disappear. Now, only the first $45,000 of an EV's price is tax-free, and those perks are gone.
That makes you wonder, will EV sales in Norway keep going up once those incentives are completely gone? It's like a house of cards. If you take away the base, will the whole thing fall apart?
It's a valid question. Norway shows how much government policies can affect what people buy, but it also makes you wonder if those policies can last in the long run.
We're seeing similar things happening in other countries, too. Like Germany had to stop their EV subsidy program because it was just too expensive. And here in the U.S., those incentives are constantly changing, especially with the elections coming up. It makes the whole market feel kind of shaky, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And all that uncertainty is even worse because EV technology is changing so fast. It's kind of like with smartphones. Do you buy the latest model now or wait a few months for something even better?
That's a tough one, especially when you're spending as much as you do on a car. And with EVs, there's that extra worry about the battery. Will it last? Will you need to replace it? How much is that going to cost you down the line?
Which brings us back to figuring out what it really costs to own an EV. It's not just about the sticker price, it's the insurance, the repairs, those potential battery replacements, and of course that depreciation hit we talked about earlier.
You know that story about the Porsche Taycan owner losing 2/3 of the car's value in 2 years? That really stuck with me. It's like a warning sign for anyone thinking about buying an EV.
It really is. So with all this uncertainty and these challenges, what do experts say people should do if they're thinking about getting an EV?
Yeah, what should people keep in mind before they jump in?
Well, the experts really stress the importance of doing your research. Figure out what you need, how you drive, what you can afford. Do you have a reliable way to charge at home? How far do you drive each day? Are you okay with the potential risks and costs of EV batteries? These are all important things to consider.
And you can't forget about the whole charging situation. Remember those broken chargers and compatibility issues? That's a real pain, especially if you have to rely on public charging.
Definitely. And don't just look at the price tag on the car. Think about those long-term costs like insurance, repairs, and depreciation. It might even be a good idea to wait a bit for the market to settle down and for prices to stabilize, especially with all the new technology coming out all the time.
So basically be patient and don't make a decision based on hype or pressure.
Exactly. It's a big investment. You don't want to regret it later.
What about people who want something now? Something that's a step toward a greener future without all the drawbacks of a fully electric car.
That's where hybrids come in. They're a great option because they take care of those immediate worries about range and charging, but they still give you better fuel efficiency.
It sounds like a good middle ground, getting some of the benefits of electric driving without going all in just yet.
Right. And it's becoming more and more popular. Toyota has been really successful with their hybrid strategy, and even Ford and GM are bringing back hybrid options. It's definitely something to pay attention to.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the car companies themselves. We've heard about some of them slowing down their EV plans, but what about the ones that are still going full speed ahead?
Well, they're facing a big challenge. how to balance their production goals with what people actually want to buy.
You mean because people aren't buying EVs as fast as they thought they would?
Exactly. EV inventory is piling up, and that's putting pressure on manufacturers to change their strategies. Some, like Tesla, are cutting prices to try to get people to buy.
But didn't we talk about how those price cuts can actually hurt the value of EVs in the long run? It's like a catch-22.
It is. It's a tough situation for these car companies. They need to figure out how to make EVs more appealing to more people without losing money or making their products less valuable. And that's where innovation comes in. Better technology, better batteries, better charging infrastructure.
Makes sense. If they can make EVs more affordable, more convenient, and more attractive to the average person, that could really change things.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the technology, it's also about the design. Remember those weird egg-shaped EVs that Mercedes-Benz tried to sell? They were a total flop because people just didn't like how they looked.
It's a good reminder that you can't just slap a battery in a car and expect people to love it. You have to make something that people actually want.
Exactly. You have to understand what people need and what they like. It's not just about being electric, it's about being a great car that happens to be electric.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit and talk about how this whole EV thing is affecting the world. We talked about how China controls the battery supply chain, but there's another side to this.
Yeah.
What about the countries that make money from selling oil and gas?
You're talking about countries like Norway, right? They're all about EVs, even though their economy depends on oil and gas. It's pretty interesting.
It is. How do those countries deal with this shift to a new kind of energy? Can they adapt and find other things to focus on, or will they try to hold on to the old ways?
It's a big, complicated puzzle, and the pieces are still moving. How fast and in what direction this energy transition goes will depend on a lot of things. Technology, government policies, the economy, and, of course, what people want.
It just goes to show that this whole EV thing is bigger than just cars. It's about changing how we power our lives.
Yeah.
And those changes will be felt all over the world.
That's true. And that brings us to a question I think a lot of people are thinking about. What will it really take for EVs to become the main way we get around?
Yeah, what's missing from the equation?
Well, based on what we've talked about, I think there are a few key things that need to happen. First, we need to make EVs more affordable for everyone. That means cheaper batteries, more efficient production, and being able to make a lot of them. Second, the charging system needs a serious upgrade. We need more places to charge, faster charging, and a system that's more reliable and easier to use. Third, we need to get rid of the confusion and worry around EVs. People need more information about how long batteries last, how much value the cars lose, and what it really costs to own one. And finally, I think we need to accept that there's no one perfect solution. Hybrids, different kinds of fuels, and other technologies all have a part to play in this transition. It's about finding the right mix of solutions that work for different people and different situations.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about pushing EVs no matter what. It's about finding a way forward that's more balanced and makes sense in the long run.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. It's not about finding all the answers. It's about exploring the complexities, challenging what we think we know, and understanding that this is an ongoing process of change and adaptation.
I'm really glad we had this conversation, Maddie. You've given me a lot to think about.
Me too. It's been a great discussion.
We've covered a lot today, from the real costs of owning an EV to the global effects of this energy shift. We might not have all the answers, but I think we have a much better understanding of the challenges and opportunities in the EV market. But before we wrap things up completely, we have one more part to this deep dive. Join us for part 3, where we'll keep looking at the changing world of EVs and talk about some potential ways to make transportation more sustainable. Welcome back to Deep Dive. You know, as we've been looking into this whole EV thing, I've been thinking about what some of the experts and YouTubers have been saying, like Patrick Boyle and James May. They're both big EV fans, but they're also pretty realistic about what it's actually like to own one. They're not just buying into all the hype.
Yeah, it's good to hear those honest opinions, isn't it? One thing that really stuck with me was what Harry Metcalf said about used EV batteries, like how there's no way to really know what you're getting.
Right. He's saying there needs to be a standard way to check and show how healthy a battery is, just like we have mileage for gas cars.
Exactly. Right now, buying a used EV is like taking a chance. You just don't know what shape the battery is in.
It's a big deal because the battery is basically the heart of an EV. It's what makes the whole thing work.
And then there's James May. He makes this funny point about how EVs are supposed to be all about efficiency in the future, but they often end up needing these huge batteries just to make up for how bad the charging system is.
He even compares the weight of his Tesla Model S to a Rolls-Royce. It's like they're trying to solve range anxiety by just making the cars heavier, which doesn't really make sense, does it?
It does make you wonder if we're focusing on the right things. Like maybe instead of bigger batteries, we should be working on faster charging technology and a better network of chargers. Imagine if you could fill up your EV in just a minute, like James May suggests. That would change everything.
A 1-minute charge. That would definitely make me think about getting an EV. But that would require a whole new way of thinking about and building charging stations.
It would. And speaking of changes, there are signs that things are shifting in the EV market, especially when it comes to money.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, Patrick Boyle points out that the market for EV parts is actually slowing down.
Really? I thought the EV market was supposed to be exploding.
The initial excitement seems to be wearing off a bit as investors and car companies realize that things aren't moving as fast as they thought they would. For example, CATL, the biggest EV battery maker in the world, is reporting lower profits because demand is slowing down and there's more competition.
So even the companies making the batteries are feeling it.
Yeah, they are. And Albemarle, the top lithium producer, has also lowered their forecast for how much lithium they think they'll need to produce. They're not expecting as many people to switch to EVs as quickly as they originally thought.
It sounds like the EV bubble might be starting to shrink a little.
It does seem that way. And this reality check is making some car makers rethink their plans.
Right, we talked about how companies like Ford and Chevy are pushing back some of their EV projects, and even those big European companies like Mercedes and Volkswagen are taking another look at their timelines.
It seems like the rush to go all electric is being replaced by a more cautious approach. They're realizing that this transition is going to take longer and be more complicated than they expected.
It's a good reminder that predicting the future is hard, especially when it comes to technology and how people behave.
It is. And as we wrap up our deep dive into the EV market, I think it's important to say that this isn't about being for EVs or against them.
Right, it's about having an open and honest conversation about the good and the bad, and realizing that there's no single answer that works for everyone.
Exactly. It's about understanding what we're giving up and what we're gaining, looking at it from different angles, and finding a way forward that works for everyone and is sustainable in the long run.
Well said, Maddie. I think we've covered some really important stuff in this deep dive. We've looked at what it actually costs to own an EV, the technology challenges, the impact on the environment, and how this whole energy shift is affecting the world. It's been a really thought-provoking journey, and I hope our listeners have gotten as much out of it as I have.
I hope so too. It's always great to explore these complex topics with you.
A big thanks to all of you for joining us on this deep dive into the EV market. We'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment below and tell us your thoughts on the future of EVs. And while you're at it, let us know what other topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes. We're always looking for new deep dives. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world around you.